Welcome to This Explainer. You know, when we think of ancient weapons, our minds usually jump straight to massive broadswords, towering siege engines, or maybe some gleaming heavy armor. But today, we're looking at something entirely different. We're going to dive into how a remarkably simple pouch and a piece of string basically became the ancient world's most devastating underdog weapon, the sling.
So how exactly did a simple pouch and cord conquer the ancient world? It's a great question, right? To get it, we really only need to look at one of the most famous stories in human history, the tale of David and Goliath. We all know the legend. A young shepherd boy takes down a giant warrior with literally nothing but a stone. But while it's super easy to write that off as just a myth or a miracle, that story is actually rooted in cold, hard historical reality. The sling wasn't a toy, it was a terrifyingly effective piece of military tech. Let's trace how this everyday tool evolved into a weapon of massive impact.
Section 1. A Lethal Prehistoric Legacy.
Take a look at this date, 10,000 BCE. That is roughly 12,000 years ago. Crazy, right? That date proves that turning stones into lethal projectiles wasn't just some passing niche trend for a single ancient civilization. No, the sling is a prehistoric weapon with over 10 millennia of continuous history. Think about the sheer number of generations of human beings who relied on this exact tool to hunt, to survive, and to wage war. It's actually awe-inspiring when you realize that for the vast majority of human civilization, the sling was right there in our collective toolkit.
And this perfectly illustrates that the sling wasn't just some crude tool for commoners or shepherds out in the fields. Get this, the oldest known surviving slings were actually discovered inside King Tutankhamun's tomb, dating all the way back to 1325 BCE. We're talking about a weapon considered so valuable, so culturally significant, that it was carefully buried right alongside one of the most famous Egyptian pharaohs in history to take with him into the afterlife. I mean, talk about serious royal prestige.
Moving on to Section 2. The Anatomy of a Throw.
The design itself is elegantly minimal. A sling is basically just a central cradle, a pouch, sitting right between two lengths of cord. Now, here is how a throw actually goes down. Step 1, you carefully place a stone right into the pouch. Step 2, you hold both cords firmly in your hand, slowly draw back your arm, and start swinging the sling up and forward. You're building momentum in this wide, powerful arc. And then, Step 3, in a split-second, sharp, punchy motion, you release just one of those two cords. Instantly, the pouch snaps open mid-swing, and that stone is violently projected away.
So, the absolutely crucial point here is that this elegant, simple design perfectly maximized human kinetic energy. By artificially extending the length of the thrower's arm, the sling acts like a powerful lever. The result? A regular, everyday stone instantly transforms into a high-speed missile. This let humans throw projectiles many, many times farther than what's biologically possible with just a bare arm. It was, quite literally, a total game-changer for range and impact.
Section 3. Cheap, light, and devastating.
As a military weapon, the sling was an absolute home run. First off, it was extremely cheap to make, literally just a bit of leather and cord. Second, it was incredibly light and easy to carry. A soldier could just tuck it right into their belt and forget about it. Third, while it definitely took practice to master, the basic concept was simple and easy to use. And fourth, which is probably the most important thing for ancient generals trying to supply massive armies, your ammunition was just lying around on the ground for free. You didn't need some complex supply chain bringing you thousands of arrows. You just looked down.
Because of all these incredible logistical perks, the sling popped up everywhere. It was genuinely loved globally in the ancient world. Well, okay, almost globally. Curiously, there was one major exception, and that was Australia. For whatever reason, the sling just never really caught on there. They completely rejected it, preferring to rule the landscape with spears and boomerangs instead. Hey, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, right? Just a really fascinating little historical quirk.
But for the rest of the world, they leaned heavily into the sling's potential, and the results were completely staggering. 650 yards, or roughly 600 meters. I really want you to just let that number sink in for a second. That is how far an expert thrower could hurl a sling stone. We are talking about launching a lethal projectile over 6 football fields away, using absolutely nothing but a piece of string and human muscle. Which brings us to a really fascinating comparison: sling versus bow. We tend to think of the bow and arrow as the ultimate ancient ranged weapon, right? But surprisingly, an expert with a sling actually outranged most bows of the ancient world. Plus, like we said, the sling was highly accessible.
Now, the trade-off was that the sling definitely had lower accuracy compared to the pinpoint targeting of a skilled archer. The bow was way more complex to make and had a shorter range, but it gave you that precision. But here's the thing. When you're firing into a massive, packed crowd of approaching soldiers, sheer distance and unlimited free ammo usually won the day.
Next up, Section 4, Ammunition and Evolution. Now, while finding 3 rocks on the ground was obviously fantastic for the military budget, the Greeks and Romans eventually decided to take the sling to the next level. They introduced specialized, manufactured heavy lead shot as an ammo option. By casting lead into these sleek, aerodynamic shapes, they added an incredible amount of extra lethal punch and extended that range even further. But, despite this high-tech ancient upgrade, the data shows us that regular old stones remained the #1 favorite choice. I guess sometimes you really just can't beat free and readily available.
And finally, Section 5, End of an Era.
Let's walk through this incredible timeline just one more time. We start way back in 10,000 BCE with its prehistoric origins. It rises up to elite status, finding its way into King Tut's tomb by 1325 BCE. It enters the classical era, getting that terrifying heavy lead shot upgrade from the Greeks and Romans. But finally, as we enter the Middle Ages, the sling largely fades out. But we really shouldn't view this as a failure, not at all. It's more of an impossibly legendary run that simply yielded to the arrival of much more sophisticated weaponry, like heavy crossbows and early firearms, which obviously changed the face of warfare forever.
So, we've gone from a simple piece of prehistoric string to a weapon that shaped the ancient world, outranged the bow, and was literally buried with kings. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What everyday object today hides a 10,000-year legacy of brilliant engineering? The next time you see a simple piece of cord or pick up a smooth riverstone, I hope you remember the hidden lethality and the sheer human genius of the sling. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep your eyes open for the fascinating history hiding right in plain sight.